I fell for my stepfather, and it ruined everything. Coming home after 3 years felt like stepping into a time capsule, familiar, yet eerily changed. Virginia's chill cut through me sharper than I remembered, or maybe it was just the coldness I felt inside. The house stood as it always had, with its white picket fence, the wreath on the door, and a welcome mat declaring home is where the heart is. But my heart, it didn't feel at home. I pulled my coat tighter against the biting wind and raised my hand to knock, but before I could, the door swung open. It wasn't my mother who greeted me. It was him, Cole, my stepfather, the man I'd last seen 3 years ago. There was something different about him. His voice held a raw edge, a roughness that struck a chord deep inside me, a chord I hated admitting existed. His shirt clung to his arms in that way that made me catch my breath, and the tired lines beneath his eyes told a story of loneliness disguised as strength. I hated that I noticed it. I hated that it pulled me in. He wrapped me in a hug that smelled like cedarwood and freshly laundered clothes. It lingered just a moment too long, and yet it wasn't enough to raise suspicion. "New York looks good on you," he said with a warm smile. I forced a smile back, but inside a whirlwind was starting. The house was filled with echoes of my past, the soft hum of jazz, the familiar furniture, the subtle scents that wrapped around me like a memory. Yet something had shifted. It was in the way Cole looked at me, a look that felt more intense than before, more searching. Not intrusive, but quietly observant, like he was deciphering a secret I hadn't spoken. That first night alone with him was charged with unspoken tension. My mother had retreated early, caught in her own nostalgia, leaving us to fill the silence. It wasn't flirtation, not yet. It wasn't even attraction. It was something deeper, a recognition, a connection that neither of us expected to find. When his hand brushed my skin, when his gaze held mine longer than it should have, I felt a fire ignite deep inside me. Fear danced alongside desire, and I was swept off my feet by the sweetness of a moment I didn't know how to name. I wondered, how could a man I once saw only as family awaken such feelings? How could the house that was supposed to be home feel like a place where everything I thought I knew was unraveling? That night was the beginning of a journey that would change everything. A story of forbidden longing, painful truths, and the desperate search for belonging. Have you ever found yourself caught between what you want and what you know is wrong? Between the past you thought you left behind and a future you never imagined? Stay with me, because this story is far from over. Returning home after 3 years away brought a flood of memories and emotions I hadn't anticipated. Virginia's cold air wrapped around me as I stepped inside the familiar house, a place that once felt like sanctuary, but now seemed like a stage set for a drama I wasn't prepared to play. The white walls, the faint hum of jazz from the living room speakers, even the old furniture, everything was exactly as I had left it. Yet nothing felt the same. Cole, my stepfather, moved through the house like a shadow present, but not fully there. There was a new edge to him, something raw and worn beneath the surface that clung to his every movement. His tired eyes, the weary lines etched beneath them, spoke of a loneliness I couldn't ignore. I tried to reconcile the man before me with the figure from my childhood, the man who had been a steady presence during turbulent times, who had carried a gentle strength that now seemed fractured. The night I arrived, Mom was out picking up wine, leaving Cole and me alone in the house. The silence was thick but honest, without the usual pretense of forced conversation. We sat across from each other in the dim living room, bathed in the flickering glow of the Christmas tree lights. He poured a glass of rich red wine, the kind he only opened for guests he wanted to impress, and passed it to me with a small smile. That simple gesture sent a shock through me, an invitation into a space I wasn't sure I belonged. Our conversations were careful, filled with pauses that spoke louder than words. We navigated topics cautiously, from how life had changed to the weight of loneliness, yet beneath it all, an unspoken connection simmered. Cole's eyes would linger a moment too long, tracing the lines of my face or the curve of my neck. I caught myself timing how long it took for him to smile after I cracked a joke, and I realized the house felt warmer with him in it, even if my chest tightened every time he looked at me. The familiarity of the house, combined with the growing intensity between us, was dizzying. I found myself pulled into his orbit, the casual touches, the quiet glances, the shared silences that felt more intimate than any words. I knew it was dangerous. I knew it was wrong. Yet the pull was irresistible. One night, unable to sleep, I slipped downstairs to the kitchen to make tea. Cole was there barefoot and wearing sweatpants, his hair tousled as if he'd just run his fingers through it in frustration. The soft blue glow of the stove cast shadows on his face, illuminating the vulnerability I hadn't seen before. "Can't sleep either?" I asked, trying to steady my trembling hands. He smiled tightly. "Seems to be a trend." We stood just feet apart, the silence between us charged with tension. I blurted out the question I couldn't keep inside. "Is it wrong? What's happening between us?" His gaze locked on mine eyes, searching for answers I didn't have. "If we're asking that, we already know," he said quietly. "But you're not taking anything that isn't already there. You're just revealing what I've been missing." His words struck me like lightning. For a moment it felt like he might lean in close the distance, but he pulled back. We shared a quiet goodbye and retreated to our separate rooms, both wrestling with the same storm inside. The days that followed were a delicate dance of avoidance and longing. During the day, we kept our distance, the facade of stepfather and stepdaughter intact, but at night, our paths crossed like magnetic fields, always close but never quite touching. Mom was caught up in holiday preparations, her laughter and chaos filling the house. She wanted to believe everything was normal, that her daughter had come home, and life was as it had always been. But beneath the surface, the tension between Cole and me simmered dangerously close to boiling. One cold evening, bundled in coats on the back porch, snowflakes drifting around us, Cole passed me a cup of coffee and asked, "Do you ever wonder why relationships fall apart?" I watched my breath fog the chilly air and replied, "People stop looking at each other." He nodded, voice soft and thoughtful. And before you know it, years pass in a single day, and the person across the table feels like a stranger. The honesty in his words caught me off guard. I realized how much we both craved connection, how desperately we sought to fill the void left by fractured relationships. In that moment, I blurted out something I hadn't meant to say. "You make me feel important." There was a pause, a shared pain hanging between us. His eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of hope mixed with fear. "We're going to hurt her," he whispered, voice barely audible. "We already are," I answered, tears burning my eyes. The guilt was crushing, but so was the undeniable truth between us. We were caught in a web of feelings neither of us fully understood or knew how to escape. The turning point came unexpectedly. One night after dinner, I stood by the window watching the snow fall, when Cole approached silently, sliding his hand to tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was small, but profound. His eyes closed briefly, as if fighting an internal battle, then he stepped back. We were pretending the line hadn't been crossed, but we both knew better. The holidays passed with forced cheer. Mom's laughter filled the house, yet the unspoken tension undercut every moment. At the dinner table, our fingers brushed briefly, sending electric jolts through me. The secret between Cole and me weighed heavily, making it hard to breathe. After dinner, as Mom retreated to bed, Cole pulled me aside. "I can't keep living this lie," he said, voice heavy with regret. "What do we do?" I whispered, heart pounding. He shook his head. "I don't know, but I can't keep pretending." That night, I overheard a broken conversation between Mom and Cole, tears, silence, heartbreak. The next morning, my bags were packed, waiting by the door. Cole was gone. Mom looked at me with vacant eyes and said simply, "It's time to go." I left with a shattered heart, carrying the weight of choices made and consequences that could never be undone. Months have passed since I last spoke to either of them. The silence is deafening. I often wonder, what if I'd stayed silent? What if I hadn't let those feelings grow? But then I ask myself a harder question. What do you do when love blooms in the wrong place, yet feels more genuine than anything you've ever known? There are no easy answers, only the echoes of a story still unfolding. The days following that tense holiday departure were a blur of silence and unanswered questions. The house, once filled with flickering Christmas lights and tentative glances, now felt hollow, drained of warmth and laughter. Cole was gone, and so was the fragile thread that had connected us in ways I didn't fully understand or dare to name. Yet in the quiet aftermath, the storm inside me raged louder than ever. I found myself caught in a whirlpool of conflicting emotions: shame, confusion, longing, and an aching sense of loss. How could a man who was supposed to be family ignite such feelings inside me? How had I let myself fall so deeply into something forbidden, something I feared and desired all at once? Every corner of the house whispered reminders of what had been and what could never be again. The kitchen, where we had shared those late-night teas and whispered confessions. The back porch, where snowflakes danced silently as we exchanged half-spoken truths. The living room couch, now empty, where his absence screamed louder than words. I replayed every moment in my mind, searching for answers. That night in the kitchen, the electric tension beneath the stove's blue glow, our eyes locked in silent question and reluctant understanding. His gentle touch, the way he looked at me as though I were something precious and fragile. The unspoken promises that lingered in the space between us. I grappled with guilt. Not just for what we had done, but for how it shattered the illusion of family I had once held dear. For the pain it caused my mother, whose laughter had once filled the rooms and whose heart I had unknowingly broken. For the secrets I had kept buried beneath layers of denial and fear. Yet alongside the guilt was an undeniable truth: the connection with Cole had revealed parts of myself I hadn't known existed. The part that craved love and acceptance, even if it came from the most unexpected and forbidden place. The part that longed to be seen and understood beyond the roles we were assigned by blood and society. As the weeks stretched on, I struggled to reconcile these opposing forces. I avoided calling or reaching out to Cole, fearing the pull would be too strong. Yet the memories haunted me, the way his voice had softened when he whispered that we were already hurting those we loved, the pain mirrored in his eyes when he admitted he couldn't keep living the lie. One afternoon, I found myself walking through the quiet streets of my old neighborhood, the chill in the air mirroring the cold inside me. The familiar sights stirred bittersweet memories: childhood laughter, family dinners, moments of innocence now tinged with regret. I felt like a stranger in my own life, caught between who I had been and who I was becoming. I reached out to a close friend, desperate for an anchor in the chaos. Over coffee, I confessed the tangled emotions, the forbidden feelings, and the unbearable weight of secrecy. She listened without judgment, her presence a balm to my aching soul. "You're not alone," she said gently. "People fall for who they fall for, even if it's complicated. But you have to find a way to heal for yourself and everyone involved." Her words resonated, but healing felt like an impossible mountain to climb. How could I mend what was broken when the very foundation had been shaken? Meanwhile, Cole's absence was a void I couldn't fill. I learned through whispers and half-truths that he had moved away, leaving behind the house and the memories. The silence between us was deafening, filled with the weight of things unsaid and dreams deferred. I tried to immerse myself in work and new routines, but the ache lingered. Every text message left unanswered, every call ignored, deepened the sense of loss. The man who had once been my stepfather had become so much more in my heart, and losing him was like losing a part of myself. At night, I lay awake wrestling with questions that had no easy answers. Was this love? Was it obsession? Was it a desperate attempt to reclaim something lost in the fractured pieces of my past? I reflected on the moments that had sparked this impossible bond: the kindness beneath his rough exterior, the shared loneliness, the way he saw me not just as a stepdaughter, but as a woman deserving of tenderness. Yet I also knew the danger of clinging to something that could never be, the pain of living in a world where our story could only exist in shadows and silence. Months later, an unexpected message flickered on my phone, a simple "hello" from Cole. My heart leapt and sank all at once. The floodgates of emotion threatened to overwhelm me. We exchanged cautious words, navigating the delicate terrain of past mistakes and uncertain futures. He spoke of regret of guilt, but also of a connection that refused to be erased. I shared my own struggles, the loneliness, and the yearning for something real. We both understood the impossible nature of what we had shared, yet neither of us could deny the impact it had left on our lives. Our conversations became a bittersweet lifeline, a way to hold on to a bond that was both beautiful and broken. As time passed, I began to understand that some loves aren't meant to fit neatly into the boxes society creates. Some connections challenge our beliefs and force us to confront the complexities of human emotion. I started therapy seeking to unravel the tangled threads of my past and present, to find a way to forgive myself and move forward. Healing wasn't linear. There were days of hope and days of despair. But with every step I reclaimed a little more of myself, a little more strength and clarity. The journey was far from over, but I was no longer lost in the shadows of forbidden love. I was learning to live with the scars and the lessons they carried. I often wonder what the future holds, if Cole and I will ever find a way back to each other, or if our story is destined to remain a bittersweet memory. But one thing is certain: that night, that impossible connection changed me forever. Have you ever found yourself caught in a love that defied all logic? A connection that challenged everything you thought you knew about, right and wrong? I want to hear your story. How did you navigate the impossible? The fragile silence that had wrapped around the house since my departure shattered like glass the moment I returned. What had once been a quiet tension simmering beneath polite smiles now boiled into an unrelenting storm that threatened to consume us all. Cole's presence was heavier than ever, no longer the distant stepfather I had remembered, but a man burdened by the secret that hung between us like a thick fog. Every glance, every brush of skin, every word carried weight, as if we were walking on a wire stretched taut above a bottomless chasm. My mother remained blissfully unaware, or perhaps willfully ignorant, swept up in the whirlwind of holiday cheer and the joy of having her daughter home after so long. But even she couldn't mask the subtle shifts, the lingering looks, the half-smiles that didn't reach her eyes, the undercurrent of something unsaid. The night that everything changed began like any other: the clink of wine glasses, the hum of Christmas music, and the easy banter that masked the cracks beneath the surface. But as the evening wore on, and the wine loosened tongues and inhibitions, the lines between what was acceptable and what was forbidden began to blur. Cole and I found ourselves drawn together, the invisible thread between us tightening until it was impossible to ignore. His hand brushed mine beneath the table, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through my body. My breath hitched, and I felt the world tilt dangerously off balance. The tension was electric, charged with desire and dread. I wanted to pull away, to retreat to the safety of denial, but the fire burning inside me was too fierce. In the kitchen, away from the eyes of others, Cole leaned close, his voice a gravelly whisper. "I can't keep pretending," he confessed, his breath warm against my skin. "This us, it's tearing me apart." I nodded, tears pricking my eyes. Me too. But what do we do now? He hesitated, then took my hand in his, squeezing it gently. "We have to be honest. With her. With ourselves." The weight of those words settled over me like a stone. Honesty meant shattering the fragile peace we had clung to, exposing the raw wounds beneath the surface. The next day was a haze of anxiety and dread. My mother's calls grew more frequent, her voice filled with hope and questions I wasn't ready to answer. I avoided her, retreating into myself, the secret a heavy cloak that suffocated. Then came the confrontation. It was a quiet afternoon when she found me alone in the living room, the sunlight filtering through the curtains, casting soft patterns on the floor. Her eyes were fierce, searching. "Lena, what's going on between you and Cole?" My heart hammered in my chest. I tried to speak, to explain, but the words caught in my throat. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I finally confessed everything: the stolen glances, the whispered conversations, the impossible feelings that had grown between us. Her reaction was a mixture of shock, anger, and heartbreak. "How could you?" she demanded, voice trembling. "How could you betray me like this?" I had no answers. Only the aching truth that I had fallen for someone I should never have desired, that I had shattered the family I loved in pursuit of something I couldn't name. The days that followed were unbearable. My mother withdrew her silence, a wall that separated us. Cole retreated too, the man I had once been drawn to, now a ghost in the house. The home I had returned to was no longer a sanctuary, but a battlefield littered with the wreckage of broken trust. Friends and family took sides, whispers and rumors swirling like a storm. I felt the weight of judgment pressing down on me, a suffocating reminder of the consequences of forbidden love. Through it all, I struggled to find my footing. The man who had once made me feel alive now seemed like a distant memory, a dream that had turned into a nightmare. One night, as I sat alone in my room, I stared at the ceiling, the silence pressing in around me. I thought about what I had lost: my mother's trust, Cole's presence, and the innocence I had taken for granted. But amidst the pain, a small ember of hope flickered. I realized that healing would take time, but it was possible. That forgiveness of myself and others was the first step toward reclaiming my life. I sought therapy, pouring my heart into sessions that challenged and comforted me. I reached out to friends who stood by me, offering support without judgment, and slowly, I began to piece myself back together. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with setbacks and breakthroughs, but I was learning to live with the scars, to accept the complexity of human emotion, and to find strength in vulnerability. Cole and I never rekindled what had been, choosing instead to part ways in search of our own healing. The love that had bloomed in the wrong place remained a bittersweet memory, a lesson in the tangled, often painful nature of the heart. Looking back, I understand that life doesn't come with easy answers. Sometimes love defies logic and breaks rules. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most profound growth. If you've ever faced a love that challenged everything you believed, know you're not alone. And remember, healing is a journey, not a destination. That story, the love I never expected, the pain I never wanted, changed me in ways I'm still coming to understand. It was a love tangled in the impossible, full of beauty and heartbreak, desire and regret. It challenged every belief I held about family, loyalty, and myself. I don't share this to shock you or to seek sympathy. I share it because sometimes life's most profound lessons come wrapped in the most complicated experiences. Because sometimes love doesn't play by the rules we expect. That night, that connection with Cole, it wasn't just about forbidden desire. It was about two lonely souls seeking something real in a world that often felt cold and unforgiving. It was about the desperate human need to be seen, to be valued, to be loved. But it was also about consequences, the hard truth that some choices come with a price. That sometimes love can hurt those we care about most. Healing isn't easy. It's messy, it's painful, and it takes time. I'm still learning to forgive myself, to rebuild trust, and to move forward with grace. If there's one thing I hope you take away from my story, it's this. No matter how complicated or broken things feel, there is always a path toward healing. There is always hope. If you've ever been caught between what your heart wants and what your mind knows is right, you're not alone. Life will test you, challenge you, and sometimes break you, but it also offers moments of incredible strength and resilience. I invite you to share your story, your struggles, your triumphs. What impossible love have you faced? How did you find your way through the darkness? Please like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more real stories that explore the complexities of love, family, and life. Remember, it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to struggle, and it's okay to ask for help. Healing begins with the courage to face your truth. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care of yourself and those you love.